Uh-oh.
Oh, crap.
I think I just had to change, since you recorded, I have to change my permissions. Oh, it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Let me just, I'll present again.
Oh, that's what it was.
There we go.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Perfect. It's up.
Okay, cool. All right, yeah. So meal prep strategies, everyone's favorite. Everyone wants to know how to meal prep. I like to say meal prepping is more than just cooking ahead, but it's definitely going to save us time, reduce stress, and then also, of course, stay consistent with our nutrition goals throughout the week or even the weekend. So we're going to be going over steps to take in order to execute a meal prep routine. And yes, here's myself. I'm Julia. Personally, I believe that including foods we love in our diet is what makes a healthy and sustainable lifestyle and diet. I really enjoy setting goals and working towards maintaining a nutrient-dense diet 80% of the time, and of course, leaving room for that flexibility. And I also love helping people find practical ways to implement a meal prep routine. So if you'd like to meet with me specifically, we could definitely discuss that, and you could reach out to me through email. And I'd be happy to support you. But of course, we'll probably go over this at the end, but you also do have access to our entire team of dietitians virtually as well. And just a medical disclaimer before we get started. We just want to preface the material by stating that the information presented in this presentation are general guidelines, recommendations, and while backed by research, does not take into consideration any medical conditions or special dietary needs, and should not be substituted for individual care or medical advice. Hopefully we won't get that serious today. It's a pretty light topic, so not a lot of medical advice, just meal prep advice. So first, there's just a little agenda. We're going to discuss the benefits of cooking at home, a little interactive Q&A, or you guys can just discuss with whoever you're sitting next to. We'll go into the different meal prep methods, and then we'll talk about how to execute this meal prepping, starting with making a plan, taking inventory, and shopping, and then finally prepping and storing our meal prep. So why cook at home? So here's our first Q&A. I don't know if someone wants to come off mute if that's possible, or if you guys just want to talk amongst yourself, but just share what you feel like are some of the benefits to cooking more meals at home. So now I don't know if it's easy to.
Cost effective for sure. More nutrient dense too. You're getting better quality at home. Sorry.
Yeah, those are great. Those are actually the 2 of 3 of them. So cost effective. It's definitely going to be more cost effective than dining out. Since restaurant menu prices have to include the cost of labor and profit as well, that's going to significantly higher the cost of buying the ingredients ourselves. Okay. And no one said more time efficient, because I do feel like this one could be a little debatable, since it could be quite time efficient to pull into a drive-through. But meal prepping or having a plan specifically for days when we are planning to eat at home could save us time if we usually end up scrambling for something in the fridge that evening, or trying to find a recipe, making sure you have everything, maybe having to run to the store, having to chop, marinate, cook, and then you're eating dinner at like 9 p.m. So if we at least know what we're having, that could alleviate some of that time. And I heard this one, most importantly, we're definitely going to be consuming, or more likely to be consuming, nutrient-dense foods, since cooking at home usually yields a meal with less saturated fat, sodium, and then calories overall, in comparison to something made at a restaurant or fast food chain, which we will compare in the next slide. So we have on our left, we have our home version, and then on the right is a sample restaurant version. So as you can see, the components of the meal are the same. We're comparing a steak. It's just really the difference in that portion size and the preparation. I don't own a restaurant, but if I had to guess, the food out, they're probably throwing in a large amount of butter or oil, than probably the average person would cook with at home. because we kind of like, we see how much we're adding and maybe we might stop ourselves a little bit, which is bumping up the calories of these meals significantly, and probably the saturated fat as well, if that was shown here. So we see how making something at home, same thing as you would get out at a restaurant, will significantly reduce the calories, especially if we're using low-fat cooking methods. So things like boiling, baking, sauteing in a small amount of oil or portion controlled amount, or even grilling. At the end of the day, the restaurant wants you to come back, so they need to make their meals extra palatable and, leaves us dreaming about it later or wanting to, comparing, I guess, our food at home to what you had at the restaurant. But balance, of course, we can still go out. All right, and now share what you feel like would be some of the challenges to cooking at home. There are some barriers you have specifically.
Schedule, so you have appointments and things after work.
Variety. Eating the same thing all the time.
Yes. Okay. So I heard schedule. So definitely I don't have time. Too tired to cook after a day of work. Maybe you feel like you don't know how to cook or cook well, or like you said, that variety, kind of cooking the same thing. What am I going to make now? And then definitely, I can't get my family to eat it. Especially if everyone has different preferences, different age groups. It's definitely a big challenge. So these are all valid. And so what we're going to do is discuss some meal prep strategies to hopefully alleviate some of these concerns. And then maybe if there's like time at the end, if you have like a specific, like, well, what if this, you could try and answer on the spot, but that would be a good place too for a nutrition appointment. So you can really have like something personalized with your schedule and your needs. Okay, so meal prep strategies. So once again, we're going to determine that best prep method. So there's multiple prep methods that we can choose from. And then we have to make a plan. Obviously, we can't jump from point A to C. Got to go grocery shopping, take inventory of what we have, so we're not overbuying. And then we're going to talk a little bit about prepping and storing the food that we made, making sure it doesn't go bad or worry about wasting food. But before we start, let's start with what a balanced meal looks like. So when thinking about what to plan, consider what the components of a balanced plate entail. So here you're seeing that basic picture of the My Plate, and that's a tool used to make sure that we're getting in a variety of food groups at each meal. So I always like to tell people if we are having, trying to fill that half the plate with some type of color, preferably if we could do half the plate of vegetables, since our vegetable servings per day are typically higher than fruit servings. So largest portion of our plate, vegetables, but we can definitely incorporate fruits in throughout the day, breakfast. A quarter grain, so trying to choose those whole grains versus refined grains. Example there would be like choosing that whole wheat pasta versus the white pasta, or trying a quinoa or brown rice with a little more fiber than a white rice. Potatoes would go here. Sweet potatoes would also go here, I like to say. Beans can go there too, even. And then a quarter protein. So always making sure that there's a protein, a vegetable, a grain, and a fruit that we have on hand in our pantry or our fridge throughout the week. So this could kind of help with that inventory piece, kind of making sure we have something on hand. So meal prep methods. If anyone likes to take notes, this would be a good time to like take that out so you could write down some of these different options, but I believe you all will also get a copy of this PowerPoint. So you could definitely print this out later to review all the options we talked about. So first there's make ahead meals. So for those with little time to prepare meals during the week, sometimes cooking those complete meals in advance to be reheated at meal times makes for super fast weeknight dinners. And when I say complete meals, I'm going back to that plate method. I'm referring to having a protein, some type of grain preferably, or starch, and then some type of vegetable as well. Or maybe for breakfast, you're prepping something, the complete meal would look something like an overnight oats that has all the components mixed into it, or a breakfast burrito. So example, your whole wheat wrap would be your grain, your eggs would be your protein and healthy fat. And then if you could saute some like peppers, onions, spinach, whatever you want to throw in there, that would be your color or vegetable. These can be left in large containers, or you could make it all nice and perfect and put it in individually portioned containers. Especially if you have like a specific health goal, or you're just looking for that convenience of literally grab and go meals. I'll say that, and if this isn't for you cooking at all, there are some meal delivery services that offer that complete meal aspect. So one example is Factor Meals. I would just check with like the sodium of those meals that they offer, and saturated fat as well. And then there's also some local ones. I know there's Prepped by Carly. She is a registered dietitian herself. I think she does like the Philadelphia area and a little bit outside. But those meals are ones that just require reheating. And then I think Prepped by Carly also does like bulk meals. So if you wanted to buy like a whole thing of chicken or some type of starch or vegetable, this would be an option there. And then I guess I'll also mention there is like HelloFresh. I know those meals I've seen are pretty high in sodium. So just make sure that we're choosing, like if there's like a low sodium option that we could choose, or like a lower calorie option we can choose specifically within HelloFresh. But that would give you all the ingredients, but you still need to like prep, cut, and prepare them all and cook it all. All right, leading us to our next one, we have our ready to cook ingredients. So if you don't like leftovers and you prefer to cook meals right before you're about to eat them, you could opt for something like prepping different ingredients. So this could be just simply chopping up the vegetables that you plan to have in your meal, washing fruit for snacks, portioning out snacks, like maybe making individual yogurt containers, or like hard boiling eggs. For like an on-the-go protein. But essentially this method is finding a way to not have to cook a meal from start to finish, like have the complete thing, but think of it as having something of the meal prepped. Remember, meal prepping is supposed to make our life easier, so it can be something small too. Doesn't have to be the complete meal or nothing. Anything helps. And then we have batch cooking. So batch cooking is all about preparing extra portions of a recipe so you can freeze them and then have ready-made meals for weeks or even months to come. Some of the main dishes that are popular batch cooking would be things like casseroles, vegetable dishes, pasta dishes like a lasagna or baked ziti. And then when the time comes, you can thaw in the refrigerator and then reheat when you're ready to eat. Like to say, soup season is upon us. So something like that would also be a good batch freezing option. You could like double a chili recipe, eat half when you make it, and then save the other half for later. You could even do like single serve proteins. So things like meatballs, turkey burgers, or veggie burgers to pull out. So. And then we have mix and match meals. So I kind of like to call this component prepping instead of meal prepping. It's a little different than batch cooking. So instead of preparing a full dish at once or mixed meals, you cook a few portions of key food groups like proteins, grains, or vegetables, and then use them in different ways over the next few days. So it's kind of like a mix of everything, all the past three ones that we talked about, right? Because we have some of those ingredients ready. We're making ahead some portion of it. And then, you could, I guess, batch cook it and freeze it. Okay, so example of this would be if you prep some chicken ahead of time, just by doing, can we prep a protein source for the week? So if we have our chicken, that way we can use it on top of a salad, compare it with a vegetable, frozen vegetable, and like a 90-minute rice packet, or toss it in a wrap, make it into a grain bowl, make it into like a bean bowl or a pasta bowl. So you have this way you have a little more flexibility. And if you're not one to like repetition, like eating the same thing every single day, I also feel like this works. You could choose recipes as well that use similar ingredients that make it easier to mix and match your meals. So you still feel varied without doing a ton of different cooking, like of different food groups. So if there's 2 recipes that you can pull that have like a chicken base to it, that way you have the chicken prepped already. You just need to prep the other components of that meal. One of my favorite ways, because I like this one, I have more to say about it, but one of my favorite strategies to implement this kind of prep is to intentionally make a little extra at dinner. So like intentionally making leftovers, I like to call it. Since you're already in the kitchen and maybe you're waiting for something to finish, like water boiling or the vegetables roasting in the oven, that's utilize that time to like chop up some raw vegetables for tomorrow's salad. That could be a good way to like fit meal prepping into your routine without having to like set aside a whole time on like, I don't know, Sunday to do a bunch of meal prepping. All right, now we're going to talk. So that was like the meal prep method. So there's a lot of different options you can choose, not just one. And now we're going to have to make a plan. So we have to select what meals or snacks we want to prep for the week. Start small. You don't have to prep every meal, even if it's, your busiest week night of the week. Choose that day to focus on and try to come up with a recipe to have prepped. Sometimes it takes you to realize how, nice that was to have that, ready-made casserole to pop in the oven and then you eat something, nutritious that night, to want to do it again and do it more as well. It's all about, building habits. You could also ask yourself, like, where you struggle most. So are you always grabbing a quick breakfast, like a muffin or baked good, as you run out the door, or you stop by Dunkin' Donuts for breakfast? Do you not bring anything for lunch and rely on fast food or just skip it altogether? But then when you get home, you were ravenous and then you start reaching for like those less nutritious choices. Or maybe it's dinner, like we said. So like non-work commitments or running the kids to practice just leaves you on the go, and then having to go through the drive-through on your way home from practice is what ends up happening. Okay, so start by choosing one meal if the idea of prepping more than one is overwhelming. So just focus on breakfast, lunch, or dinner even. And then when selecting a recipe, be realistic. Consider what your week looks like. If you know there's a day or days of the week where you'll be at home for a small window after work before running to your next commitment, maybe this is a good evening to have like an entire meal ready, like a casserole, to reheat in the oven. I always like to use Google to my advantage. So like if you want a 30-minute chicken recipe that has, minimal ingredients or like whatever ingredients you have on hand, search exactly that. So if you have like a chicken, a cauliflower and potato, like throw that into Google, and then Google usually pops up like those 30-minute recipes, or one pot recipes, like sheet pan recipes. Those are always good. There are a few websites that have like filter options. So you can actually choose your protein source and then that's how it filters your recipes. So at least it narrows it down. Sometimes I feel like looking at like a million recipe ideas on Pinterest or whatever, it can be overwhelming. Some of those websites are The Real Food Dietitians, Skinny Taste, and then Oh Snap Macros. So, and I can repeat them at the end if anyone needs them, but those all have an option to filter by specific proteins. So you could make that even your starting point. Like, okay, I have chicken, what are the recipes I can make with the chicken? And of course, we're gonna have to schedule the prep. So it's one thing to plan it, but we're gonna have to decide when we're gonna include the prep time. So is it on Saturdays, Sundays? Maybe you partially prep on Sunday for 30 minutes and then do like another 30 minutes midweek. There's no right or wrong answer to this. So it doesn't always have to be that Sunday meal prep. People even like to prep on Monday. That's fine. So whenever you have time, is going to be best choice So sometimes people need like a restock midweek. So if there's anything you need to do to finish the week strong, like cutting more vegetables or snacks or like making more overnight oats, that's also a good, you could also implement like a prep time midweek if you wanted to finish out the week. Now, we could definitely utilize convenience. Sometimes we're gonna, our schedules are gonna get busy, and we might need to rely on some of these quick items. So instead of relying on like the convenience of drive-through, let's focus on perhaps maybe some of our freezer options or like our semi-prepared meals to help make some healthy choices. Freezer meals aren't less nutritious if we're focusing on the minimally processed options. So maybe not like a frozen pizza, but maybe like a bag of broccoli without the cheese sauce. That would be a good choice. So definitely lean on those when you need to. There's nothing wrong with that. So like I said, just stocking it with frozen fruits and vegetables, do like smoothies or for breakfast, or vegetables is just like a simple dinner side. And once again, just make sure the vegetables aren't coated in some type of sauce or seasoning. We can season it ourselves at home. You can also buy meat and poultry in bulk or fish and then freeze that. So if you just want to focus on doing like a small prep step, you could even make sure there's always a protein that's thawing in the fridge that you can cook that evening. Kind of make it a routine. Because that way, if it's like defrosting, we have limited days to cook that after it's defrosted. So maybe that might encourage you to, be like, okay, well, I got to make dinner tonight or it's going to go to waste. Frozen burgers or patties are nice to have on hand for like a quick meal if you forget to take a protein out to thaw. Kind of going back to like those single serve meatballs, you could do that. Trader Joe's has a lot of frozen fish patties, or they also have like a high protein veggie burger if you wanted. Of course, there's like turkey burger options. Those are always good. I would just caution, obviously, with anything frozen, we're probably going to be dealing with some added sodium. But I always like to say, is that going to be a better choice than if you were to go to McDonald's and get, a Big Mac, French fries, and, probably less sodium with a turkey burger from the freezer. And then you could always freeze, utilizing the freezer too, going back to that batch cooking, that's when some of these meals could come in handy too. So we can always freeze our leftovers if you don't like eating, the same thing over and over, or utilizing those batch cooked recipes that we talked about earlier. And then if we're in a pinch, we could also utilize semi-prepared items. So that would be things like pre-cut vegetables or salad kits or rotisserie chicken. Kind of the frozen vegetables, I guess, would fall into this category, or like a grain medley with the like 90-second rice pouches. So these items might come at like an added cost, but it's always going to be cheaper and likely healthier than going out to like a restaurant or ordering takeout. So definitely have to factor in your budget there a little bit. And then of course, leaning on any cooking gadgets. So there's so many things now. Someone said they had like the air fryer, like 5,000 the other day. I was like, what is that? Apparently it does like 5 things in one. Instapots, slow cookers, or like sheet pan or one pot meals are great too. All right, so that was our plan. Now we want to take inventory and then build that shopping list. So before rushing to the grocery store, we want to keep that running inventory of the foods that you frequently use during like your weekly prep. So things like olive oil, maybe it's like onions or brown rice or beans. Some of those more like shelf stable things are good staples to have on hand and kind of make sure, okay, do I have this regardless of if I'm meal prepping that week or not. Same thing with like spices. So if there's any common spices that you like to use, just kind of making sure that they're on hand. Because I like to say we can do a lot with seasonings and just like a chicken breast. So really utilize the seasonings to make it flavorful. Tips for building a shopping list. If you want to navigate the store a little better, you could organize your list by the department. So kind of visualize in your head what the layout of your store is and like which path you tend to go. If it's, I'm just envisioning my giant, it's like starting with the produce. So I would, write all my produce items. I'd write like all my dry items, freezer items, and then dairy items as well. And then we talked about the staples with the shopping list. But yeah, you could do you look at your fridge, freezer, or pantry for some of those staple items. And then here's a wonderful list of like pantry, fridge, and freezer staples. I don't know how big your screen is, but if you want to snag a picture of this with your phone, this is not like a complete list, but it's a great example of how to stock your fridge, freezer, pantry with those healthy choices. So our pantry staples are going to be those grains. So rice, quinoa, oats, whole wheat pastas, bean-based pastas, or any of like the chickpea or lentil pastas are great. You could do bread or wraps, and you could always freeze those. I guess that'd be more on the frozen ends, but I always freeze my bread and it tends to last a lot longer. Our fridge staples, yogurt has a decent shelf life. Same with cheese. Milk is usually like a week after you open it. And then some of those dressings and sauces. Yeah, and in the freezer, a lot of that poultry meat products. So we've made it to the fun part for some people. This is when we start prepping our meals. So here's some helpful tips to keep in mind. I always like to say begin cooking or like start with the foods that require the longest cooking times and then multitask within that. So if there's a sheet pan, if there's roasted vegetables that take 30 minutes to make, do that first and then, I don't know, cut other things up within that time. Or like bringing water to a boil, bring water to a boil and then do something else in between if you're making like hard-boiled eggs or pasta or like another one of those grain options. Prep what you'll use. So this is where that food waste reduction comes into play. This is where also going back to that plan, right? If we go to the store and just buy a bunch of things, sometimes then that will go bad, or we won't use it all. So, even if it's being like, okay, can I pick like 2 vegetables for the week, 2 fruits, and then 2 grains for the week or 2 proteins? You could use that. And then I always like to say at the end of the week, see what you threw out, see if anything went bad. Did you make too much of something? And then learn from that. So we don't keep repeating the same thing. It might take some trial and error, but we do want to eliminate food waste as much as we can. And then just be mindful of storage life as well. The CDC has like a great thing that I feel like everyone needs to put on their fridge with like the shelf life of like, everyone always asks their family, is this chicken still good? Like it goes over all those protocols. I can share that in the chat too. But that could be helpful for like cooked chicken. So you're not worrying about having to eat it bad or whatever, but taking that storage life into consideration. And then just want to make sure that we're freezing properly. So for soups and cooked grains, we want to cool them to room temperature within 2 hours, and then we can store it in a quart-sized plastic container or Ziploc freezer bags. And you just want to leave an inch at the top of the containers for the food to expand as it freezes. For casseroles, you can wrap with wax paper and then cover that tightly in foil. And then, of course, just label and date all your containers or bags just to make sure we're not consuming foods past their expiration date. Don't want to get sick because that would ruin cooking for some people. And then just be sure to reheat anything that you like froze back to a temperature of 165 when you're ready to serve it. I remember if it's I think it's the FDA that has the chart. I'll put it in the chat. So now we have like 3 or 2 little prep sheets. So the first one is breakfast. So here are some make ahead options. So for anyone who said a berry of theirs is like the variety, not knowing what to cook, maybe if you want to snag a picture of this for different options. We have some make ahead options here. and then minimal prep as well. And then this will also be in the copy of the PowerPoint. So if you want to just print it out, you could do that. We have some egg options. We have some oatmeal options. And then we have like a baked, I guess they're all oats or eggs. You could also do like chia seed pudding. It's another popular one, or smoothies. Oh, they're over there. Can't see. Okay. And then we have lunch and dinner. So make ahead, going back to those meal prep options, depending on which one you choose. Maybe you have some of this make ahead stuff, like a protein, starch, and a vegetable. Grain bowl soup. Kind of talk about how we utilize like a protein in different options. So if we want to make it into a sandwich, you can make it into a wrap. We could put it in a salad. You can make a bowl. Make a soup. And then here's just some snacks as well. So fruits, vegetables, there's a lot of like healthy muffin recipes that usually use like ground oats to add a little bit more fiber instead of white flour. Energy bites with like the oats and peanut butter recipes. Grab and go options, nuts, seeds, trail mix are great. Fruit, a whole fruit, I always like to say. So utilize like those kiwis, oranges, anything, bananas, apples, plums, peaches, anything you don't have to like peel and prep, just like grab and go. Yogurt's great, cheese. Peanut butter packets are nice. Those like individual serving ones. So that was a lot of information. So overall, we need a plan that's going to work for you, not what's working for someone else on Instagram. So we have no idea how much time they actually have behind the camera. So don't base your meal prep routine around someone else's life, because they might have the whole day. That's their whole job to, meal prep and produce those recipes all day. If you're looking for, so the complete meals that I mentioned, factor meals, there's also Cook Unity and Modify Health. Those are some popular choices. And then, like we said, those meal delivery services, you could do like Home Chef, Blue Apron, Green Chef. Those could be nice because you get all the ingredients, but you still have to kind of do some of that prep work. Utilize your freezer, embrace leftovers, make it taste good. I always like to say, if you want to reheat your leftovers in like a saute pan versus microwaving it, sometimes that would make it seem less like leftovers. Or if you want to like throw it on a sheet pan and throw it in the oven, or heat it in like an air fryer if you have that. And enjoy, our whole foods. Think about like the foods that we can grab and go that are whole. We don't have to do a lot of prep work. Those are also going to be helpful when incorporating some of these already prepped options. All right. And then I don't know if Becky, did you want to talk about the transformation challenge before we do questions, or do you want to do questions first and then?
I can talk about this real quick if you would like.
Mhm.
So yeah, we are launching a really fun nutrition transformation program on October 1st. So it's basically a way to utilize your benefit of the 6 nutrition visits per year that is covered by your health insurance. So how it's going to work is between October 1st and October 21st, if you are able to get in 4 of those visits with your registered dietitian, then there's a fun little prize that you can be entered to win. It's just a $100 gift card to Amazon. So perfect for around the holidays, of course. And all you really have to do is schedule your appointment as normal and let the registered dietitian know that you're participating in the program. And then you can get the points for participating and, like I said, get entered to win.
That's awesome. You guys did see the email that came out, right? I did send an email. I believe it was like last week that I sent it out, and I will continue to market this and send it out for the next couple of weeks. So I'm really hoping we'll get a lot of employees involved. It's a great way to remember that they're free. So that's what's also really good to remember, that it is, it's free, but you have a great service available to you. And maybe it isn't meal prepping, but maybe it's something else specific that you need. But Julia and her team can work with you to kind of find the right fit for your diet and help you kind of get to that next level.
Yes. And it's a good time, good transition time. I always like to say from summer, now we're gonna like start entering the holidays. So it could be nice to have some accountability with your nutrition for that.
That's an excellent
Um,
point. Halloween kind of ramps up the holiday season, so it's a perfect time to talk to your dietitian.
Exactly.
Keep us honest. But if there's any like little questions about anyone meal prepping, anything. Any- Anyone like, are any of these, I can go back to the meal prep slide or like the different options, but are any of these like new to you? Did you know that there's like other meal prep methods besides making like the complete meal? Have you ever considered that?
That's a lot of times, that's a good way to use a whole thing. If you're buying a whole pepper, right? You don't need that for the meal you're making, so you cut it up and save it. Same like a whole onion or things like that, so you're not wasting as much.
For sure. I personally meal prep on Sundays. It's the easiest day for me to do it. And I just put containers in the refrigerator, glass containers that are full of different proteins and different vegetables and different grains. And I always, because I really like, my family likes potatoes and sweet potatoes. So I roast all of them and then put them in containers. And then that way it's a grab and go, because we all might not eat together at the same time either. And that's the other piece of this, right? It's not just necessarily like having meal for yourself. Maybe your family's not all sitting at the same time. So it's a way for everybody to kind of, get healthy meals that, they get at different times too.
Yeah, I love that because also everyone has different preferences. So if you're you're really focused on nutrition, but maybe someone else in your family is not, well, at least you have those healthy options to reach for. If like the dinner, maybe you want to, instead of having mashed potatoes that night, oh, I made ahead my quinoa, so I can have that instead of the mashed potatoes. I don't know who's swapping out mashed potatoes for quinoa, but you know what I mean. Questions, just soaking it all in. Maybe this is a good time too, Friday, because if you're doing your grocery shopping this weekend or planning for next week, we can start next week off strong. What can we do to set ourselves up for success? Lots of people really like grocery shopping on Fridays because then they actually have food for like the weekend and then they're not relying on takeout as well. So just to go and show you, grocery shopping doesn't always have to be done on like a Saturday or Sunday either. Same thing with meal prepping whenever you have time.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate it. I will, like I said, I will continue to market the transformation program. And if anybody has any questions, I will send them off. But I think we're good to go. And I will put this out to all of you guys. Like I said, or email it. Yes. So I will email it to all of you guys afterwards. All right. So thank you
Great.
again very much.
Yeah, thank you guys for
Next
coming.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a nice weekend.
You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Sorry, I thought she was going to tap in for a second on the idea of meal, not meal, sorry. This is actually so funny. I have to go here to stop the recording online. Whenever we have the dual